All right, everybody, welcome back to the Strong Life podcast. We have a special guest, Sean Glass, Primal Beef Company, Echelon Front, former Navy SEAL. Very excited to talk about training, talk about life, talk about nutrition, talk about family, really the topics that are very inspiring and exciting to a lot of the men who listen to the Strong Life. Sean, welcome.
Zach,
Appreciate you.
thanks for having me, man. Fired up to be here.
Yes. So came across your work, I think through Instagram, Primal Beef. I can't remember who shared it. Probably heard it with Jocko talking about it, and was super inspiring for me. I've been talking about this topic for probably like 2.5 years, as I mentioned to you on Instagram. Like in those early portion of COVID, my wife and I took a trip out to Pennsylvania and started buying our meats from a Mennonite farmer. And the conversation started as I told her, I said, listen, so at that time, my son would have been 12, maybe 11, 12 years old. I said, listen, boys have boobs and beer bellies, yet they don't drink beer. Like, what the hell is in our food? And so coming across Primal Beef, seeing what you guys are doing. I've worked with SEALs before. I do a fundraiser every year for a SEAL foundation. So I'm excited to have you on board. I want to try to do it somewhat in chronological order. So
Yeah,
former Navy SEAL, how many years have you been out of the SEAL teams for?
I got off active duty in the very tail end of 2019, and then I stayed in the reserves for about a year, and then punched out from there. So 2019 in actuality.
Yeah, very recent. Where were you, on the West Coast, East Coast?
Yeah, West Coast, entire career on the West Coast, never had to move, which is pretty rare for officers in the teams. Stayed there the whole time and just bounced around from team to team for 13 years.
That's right. You were an officer. So officers, when you go through OCS, Officer Candidate School?
So there's different paths you could go. You could go to the Naval Academy. You could go through ROTC from different colleges that have these ROTC programs. I was OCS, so I went to Texas A&M. Wasn't in the Corps, nothing like that. I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to go into a ROTC program because you're not guaranteed to get into the SEAL teams from a ROTC program. And if you go to ROTC program, you're going to the Navy regardless. So my view was, hey, I want to go into the to at least to try. I want to go to BUDS and try to be a SEAL. So primary, try to be an officer. If they won't take me as an officer, then I'll just enlist and go the enlisted route. But I was fortunate and got picked up for officer program. So then I went to OCS, which is 13 weeks, and then right from there over to selection.
It's amazing. My older brother graduated OCS a little bit before 9/11, and
Oh man, yeah.
I still remember just the aura of being. It was at Quantico, correct?
Yep. Is this Marine OCS or Navy OCS?
Marine. So
Yep.
did you?
Quantico.
Okay, but I could have sworn he had said there was there was active duty soldiers kind of from different branches.
Could be. There's different training that goes on in Quantico, but Navy OCS was in Pensacola, and then originally it was Rhode Island. Then they moved it to Pensacola, and then they moved it back to Rhode Island, 2008-ish, 2007-ish timeframe, something like that.
Nice. Yep. So I've never been up to that spot, but the aura and the respect that the whole town gave to the military and the officers, I still remember it. And that was, 20 plus, it was like 2000 or 99. So
Yeah.
very impressive. What's cool to see is you don't see too many former SEALs going into quote unquote regular jobs. It's like you guys, I guess the question is, are you guys realizing like you just cannot work with normal people? So the trend seems to be start a business.
I don't know that it's necessarily not working with normal people. I think that we just inherently have issues with authority, even though we all join the military. Probably every SEAL doesn't like anything less than getting told what to do. So it kind of lends itself to different types of employment, a lot of which is kind of starting your own thing up.
With Echelon Front, it's impressive how it grew massively. I followed JP Donnell, and he's on an airplane every weekend, where I actually thought it seemed like there was maybe a Echelon front event quarterly, but I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, so we have our big events like the muster where we open it up to the public. We have to cap it at 1,000 people because we can't fit any more into the venues that we're going to. So we cap it at 1,000. Those happen 3 times a year. We have field training exercises about 3 or 4 times a year for individuals to come to. We host these battlefield tours in Gettysburg, Little Bighorn, where people get to come link up with Jocko, Leif, JP, and hear about the leadership lessons from those battlefields. Those are the big company-wide events, but we're working with companies from across the planet, from every sector of the economy you can possibly imagine on a daily basis. So most of our time as instructors, consultants, if you will, for Echelon Front is spent building relationships on the ground with those different companies.
What has been the area as far as like companies that are reaching out to you guys to get leadership training? For example, you and I chatted a bit through Instagram, and I've been saying this a lot, so it's nothing new on this podcast, but I feel like public schools are in big trouble in a lot of ways. So it'll be interesting, like what companies, type of companies, is it tech companies? Is it who's reaching out to you guys for a lot of the training?
It's every type of company you can possibly imagine. Top 10 companies on the planet, we're working with a couple of them, brand new startups, health industry. I actually did some work with a school. So is my friend Jason, who's also one of our instructors down in Georgia. The person that brought us in was actually a huge power lifter. So we had an instant connection. But first responders, tech companies, construction companies, you name it, sales companies, you name it, and we're involved with those companies.
Talk a little bit about the school. Was it a public school? What
It's a
type of
public
school?
school down in Georgia, awesome administration, awesome guy running the program, just trying to make things better for the school. And what he wanted to focus on was his staff. And if the staff understands the importance of leadership in the classroom, for the kids to learn leadership, the importance of building relationships, the importance of not making excuses and taking ownership, then that's a win. And he's brought us in twice so far to work with him, and an awesome team, took everything on board, and they're really doing some good stuff down there.
That's impressive. Do they have within the school, you guys talk about decentralized command, do the teachers create some sort of leadership program where they teach it to the students?
I don't know that they were able to kind of create their own program, but his goal was teachers are living, breathing, and talking about these things with their class on a daily basis, which is going to have more impact than offering a course on it will anyway. The daily interactions, the daily discussions, the modeling the behavior, the calling out the good behavior when you see it, that's the things that's going to have more of a long-term impact.
What's I was listening to, I think, 2 podcasts. You had Undaunted Life. I'm going to link
Yeah.
them up. So for people listening, that was awesome. And there was another company, I think it seemed like you had consulted for them and spoken for them. He had the video on YouTube, Iron something. I forget what kind of company it was.
Shoot,
Um,
blanking out. Iron, anything with
uh,
iron. Oh, Big Iron.
there you go. What kind of
Yeah,
company was
yeah.
that?
Yeah, so he is involved in selling basically farm equipment, which is something that I've come to value a lot more now that I live out in the country and have a farm. But he took on himself, put together basically an event to bring in all of these different purveyors of farm equipment to one location. Him and his wife started it all up, just pouring hours and hours into organizing this event. And it's basically a networking opportunity for all these different individuals to get together and strategize about basically how to support the farmers the best that they possibly can through the sale of their equipment. And big believer in extreme ownership, big believer in teaching people how to build relationships and lead. So I had the opportunity to go in there and actually give a keynote at their big event. And then I got to record a podcast with them as well.
That's impressive. I've actually never heard of somebody who's selling farm equipment and essentially building a mastermind to make everybody better. But it reminded me, I have a buddy that was a strength coach. He played football, Virginia Tech. was a strength coach at Virginia Tech. And then when the head strength coach, who had been there like 30 years, resigned, a new football coach came in. They basically release all of the coaches. He was hired by an alumni, and he was working for John Deere. Now he's
Oh,
with
right on.
he's with another company, farm equipment. I'll have to see where he is. So he's not in. How far are you from that Virginia Tech area?
So I'm still fairly new to Virginia, and I'm getting my bearings down, but I'm probably only like 2 hours away from there.
Okay. I got to reach out to him and see where he is, and give you his contact number. I don't recall the company he's working for, but that was really cool that an alumni taking care of a guy, and he said he loves it. It's a better quality of life. When you're a football strength coach, you're working crazy hours.
Yeah, my sister is actually one of our trainers for the SEAL teams right now. And before that, she was a strength coach at Arkansas for the Razorbacks. Before
Wow.
that, she was a strength coach at Purdue when she was getting her master's. Before that, she was a strength coach at TCU when she was an undergrad and playing soccer there. And no work-life balance whatsoever. I mean, she was logging 90, 100-hour weeks between coaching, being at the games, all of these different things. So it's a grind for sure.
It is a lot. Does she have same last name as you, or?
She does. Yeah.
Okay, so she's not married yet. The women in strength and conditioning is like it's like a very underserved population. Some of them, though, I need to put her in touch with my friend. She's the director of all sports performance at Pitt. So she
Oh, yeah.
oversees football, Olympic strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
And that's women are really underserved in that area, but very, very impressive to hear what your sister's doing. How many years ago did you move out to Virginia? In the one podcast I was listening to, I know you have a family. I think you have 4 kids now, right? 5. Very impressive. I think once you're past 2, it's like,
You know, 2 to 3 was the jump. 2 to 3 was like, oh my goodness, this is significantly more work.
Yeah.
And then like 3 to 4, who cares? 4 to 5, you're like, whatever. Everything just kind of functions on its own. Big kids can help the little kids. So 3 is the breaking point. Once you get past that, it's just smooth sailing.
That is
So
great.
we've been out here since 2021 is when we made the move. And my wife's family, she's one of 8. And her family originally from New Hampshire, but they about 10 years ago, kind of one by one started moving to this town in the Shenandoah Valley. So the big reasoning for us getting out of the military was, one, the wars were over, so there was no more fun for at least the foreseeable future. And 2, we wanted to give, I grew up on a small ranch in Texas. We wanted to give our kids the same experience of being close to the land and being close to family. And, my sister was the only family that we had out in San Diego. There was no cousins. There was no nothing like that. So we moved out here 2021, and now they've got grandparents are out here, aunts and uncles are out here, more cousins than you can count are out here. And it really is just a super tight community where you feel like you're actually a part of the community. You go to a store, you're seeing people. You go to a restaurant, you're seeing friends having conversations. Everyone's on the same sports team. So it's hard to replicate that in a city. And I think it's one of the keys to happiness in life is being able to build out a community. And this has definitely given us that in spades.
It's impressive. I just watched that movie. I think one of your buddies recommended it, Jason Gardner, Biggest Little Farm. Did you see that?
Farm. Great film.
It's amazing. I'm actually going to show it to the high school students today. I think there's a lot in schools, they talk a lot about emotional health, mental health, wellness, but you and I had this conversation a bit through Messenger. It's like, I feel your mind is, I'm not really speaking, at you, Sean, you're got your strength training, your weight room right behind you, but the lack of doing hard shit is actually stressful, in my opinion. If I'm not doing difficult things, I'm kind of an asshole to be around. Like, I have to do it. And kind of everything in our culture is based on comfort, which crushes us, like convenience. There was, as much as it was a joke, like a month ago or so, when there's like, hey, America might be attacked, it'll be World War III. My wife sends me this Instagram video, and a kid says, we're not going to fight. We're the generation that built an app to have McDonald's delivered to us. And as much as that was a joke, I was like, that's true. Like if we were to be attacked, this younger generation would be in serious trouble. Although I don't think if we have a war, I think it'll be more of like a power outage type technology
Yeah.
type thing that incapacitates people. Like yesterday, Facebook and Instagram was down for a bit, and people were very upset, like they were having a breakdown for that hour or two. But talk about when you what did the move look like to finding property, finding land, moving to Virginia? Was
Yeah.
Primal Beef your company already created before you got to Virginia? I want to
No.
hear about the kind of what it takes to move. What's a bit of a plan?
So it takes a lot of just faith and trust that everything's going to work out. And for us, we had the family there. So we knew if nothing else, we were going to be close to family. We had the fortunate scenario of we visited the town, Front Royal. We visited here at least once a year for the last 10 years to see family. So we were getting a taste of life here, a taste of the community, seeing the different areas. So we were familiar with what was going on in that area. And then when we decided to make the move, we said, hey, we'll give it a year. We're not in a rush. We'll look for a good property. When the right property comes up, we'll put an offer in on it. And then we'll just move based off of that, basically. And almost right off the bat, perfect property came up. I flew out, met with the owners. They had owned this farm that we're living on right now. The same family has owned it since 1841. There's a barn right outside that if you post that video from this morning, the red barn that's in the background, that barn was built in like 1803. So there's a lot of family history on this farm. They have a son that had learning disabilities, and he was older now. When he was younger, he was a part of the community. He was going to school. He had friends at church. He had all those things. As they get older, all of his friends are getting married. They're settling down. They're having kids. He's never going to do that. He's never going to have the opportunity to do those things. So he wanted community, and he didn't feel like he had it. So his mom and his dad found this place in North Carolina called Holy Angels, which is a vocational home basically for people with different types of disabilities. And they cultivate this place they can live, they can work, they find them jobs out in the community, they give them a purpose, they give them community. And he went down there and just fell in love with it. And his parents made the ultimate sacrifice for him, which was what's more important, the family farm or making sure that our son is happy. So they all made the move down to North Carolina, and we just happened to be looking at the right time. And they're now close family friends of ours. Whenever they come in, we break bread together at the farm. They want to go around and visit all the animals still. So we got lucky that came up, and we did the deal, no joke, on a handshake. There was nobody involved. There was no realtors involved. It was a handshake deal. And then we realized we probably actually have to get a realtor involved to make everything legal. But it was literally the best case scenario. They were thrilled that it was going to a family that was going to love it. And we were thrilled to have the opportunity to keep the legacy of the farm going. We made the move. It's never going to be the right time. Like, it's never going to be the perfect time. You've just got to jump in and just do it. And that's like with anything with life. Anytime we add a new animal to the farm, we never really think through it too much. Like, oh, let's add chickens. Cool. Like the next day I'm going and buying chickens. We want a dairy cow. I'm like looking for a dairy cow right now. I don't know really what to do with a dairy cow. I wasn't raised on a farm, but I know we'll figure it out. And I know that my kids will be better for having to figure out what to do with the dairy cow. So timing's never going to be perfect. The big thing that I would say is just be strategic with why you're moving to a place. We were moving here specifically for the community. All the things that you see going on in the public schools, in the cities and stuff like that is the polar opposite of what's happening right here. The kids that my kids have the ability to, the benefit to be around are the most squared away, respectful, self-reliant, capable kids you can ever imagine. And I'll give you a couple examples. One of my friends here runs a tree clearing business, rather large company that he built out. And, we were over at his house one day and I was borrowing a piece of farm equipment, and he sends his son, who's 10 years old, to go pull his 100 horsepower giant John Deere tractor around to hook up to the farm equipment for me. 9-year-old kid driving around a, 15-ton piece of farm equipment like it was no big deal. I was driving down one of the country roads. I saw this truck, old truck that was having some issues. It was, sputtering, not really getting much combustion. So I kind of pulled up to the side. They pulled over on the side of the road. I went over to talk to them. It was actually my partner in Primal Beef's kids. They weren't old enough to drive yet legally. I think one of them was like 14, but they were
Great.
driving this truck back home and it was having issues. And I said, "Hey, why don't you let me give you a hand?" And they said, "No, we're okay." I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay, well, why don't you let me go get your dad?" And they're like, "No, we're fine. Like, we'll take care of it." I'm like, 14-year-old kid, truck broke down on the side of the road, literally not concerned about it whatsoever because he knows that him and his sister were going to figure out what to do to get back home. So that's the environment that we wanted our kids to be around, closer to the land, closer to family, and around a community that's going to support the things that we think is important. And one of those things is it's just an awesome faith community out here too, which is something that's real important to us. So be strategic about why you're going to a place. Don't go to a place because it's pretty. Don't go to a place because they have cool mountains there. Go to a place that is going to fill in a gap for you in what you're looking for right now.
What's the schools? Are you homeschooling, or do they have a public school there,
So
private school?
public school, private school. Public school is better than most, but they're still having a lot of issues that most public schools are having. We don't mess around with any of that stuff. We sent them to a private school that was started by some families about 20 years ago. Faith-based school, awesome community, awesome athletic program. My wife's she's the head soccer coach there now. I help with the rugby club that's there. So, we didn't get involved in the public school system. We homeschooled for a little bit during COVID, and it was surprisingly easy. And it was, well, I say that I didn't do much because I was still in the military, but my wife thought that it was surprisingly easy to balance all of those things, even with 5 kids. And it was empowering because now we know if we want to take a year off and just travel the country or travel the globe, we know we can do the homeschooling piece right here. Now, our farm doesn't require a whole ton of work. If it did, we might have to think about keeping the kids around and doing more homeschooling. But because of how the farm's set up, they're going to a great school where the teachers are making them better and their peers are making them better too.
So interesting how your environment shapes everything. So, where I picked that up was I studied combat sports. And so I just looked, where are the best wrestlers coming from? So I would look at Russia. Now you look at like Dagestan, and the power of the internet. Now some of these coaches share what they're doing. I'll have to send you some videos, but it just shows that what they view as normal, it doesn't shock them. And so I think sometimes you're mentioning some stuff as like a dad, these kids, they're like, no, we don't need help. I catch myself, I got 2 kids, 17 and 15, is every time you try to save them because you think you're helping them, you're usually not. And so what have you picked up as a dad through the years, through these experiences, with just stuff that's going on in the world that you've changed, that you feel has made you a better father?
Yeah, some of the things that my parents did for me growing up, and no one's parents are perfect. We make mistakes along the way, myself included. You're learning as you go along. But one of the things that my parents did specifically for me was I had a lot of freedom. I had a lot of freedom to roam around our property, to get into trouble on the property, to figure things out on my own. And at the time, like as a kid, you might not really appreciate that. You might not really understand what value there is to that. But looking back at it, it definitely is super empowering for kids to be able to given a certain amount of freedom to make mistakes, to learn, to figure things out on their own. And, my goal and my wife's goal here on the property is the kids will figure stuff out. If they need to go and hook up the hay bale unroller to put hay out for the cows, I'm going to show them how to do it once, and then it's up to them. And if it takes them an hour to do it because they can't remember every step and they have to figure it out on themselves, that's perfectly acceptable, because it's not about the hay getting unrolled. It's about them being more confident and capable that they can tackle problems. So maybe some of it is my inherent laziness, but I'm not helping them with things. If they need to figure something out, aside from homework and things like that, we'll work through it. But if it's stuff on the farm or it's stuff to do with their chores, my strategy is, which was the same as my parents, which was, don't bother me, go figure it out. Because I know at the end of the day, they're going to be better for figuring out. Now that is paired with the quality time spent with them. So they're in the tractor helping me out. I'm out there with them helping roll the hay out. So we're getting some quality time in together, but I default more towards just letting them figure things out. And it's super important for kids to be able to go through a certain level of stress, because every time they go through that stress, they're resetting the bar for what they're capable for. There's no growth without stress, whether that's the weight room, whether that's, mixed martial arts, combatives like we just talked about, whether that's personal growth. You're not growing unless there's some kind of stress response involved. If a kid doesn't know how to do something, there's stress there. The second they figure it out, there's no more stress there, and they've just elevated the bar for what they're capable of dealing with. So the more that you can inoculate them in manageable stress, the better they're going to be for it in the long run, which, like you said, is very countercultural right now because everybody's trying to make things as comfortable as humanly possible.
Yeah, well, the schools and just society in general talks a lot about mental health and mental well-being, and what you're mentioning with your kids figuring stuff out. I'm a little older than you, Sean. I'm 48, but I heard somebody saying mental health. They're like, what the F is mental health? They're like, back in the day, we just called it life. Like,
Yeah.
and I thought, man, what a perfect way to look at it. We label everything. Is your property where Primal Beef is located, is it the same farm?
Yep. No, so it is not. My property is not big enough to sustain the number of cows that we have for Primal Beef. So one of the things that I learned during my time in the military, and one of the things that we teach, the most important thing that we teach at Echelon Front, outside of just taking ownership for your problems, is the importance of building relationships. And what I told every single person that I had the opportunity to lead in the military was, relationships equal mission success. Your ability to build good, positive relationships is going to be the determining factor of how good you are going to be at getting things done. So we built out a relationship with a local farmer who has much more property and who's just really dialed in with the cattle operation to start Primal Beef, because my property, my partner Paul's property, even if you combine those two properties, it's just not going to be enough to feed the amount of people that we want to feed with Primal Beef. So it was a relationship that we built out with a local farmer, and all of our cows come from that one farm that's right up the road from us, right in the middle of the Shenandoah Valley, like the most beautiful place you've ever been, lush green pastures, great environment for raising cattle. And they all come from that one farm, and they're all raised the exact same way. So every time you place an order, your experience is going to be the exact same. The ribeye is going to taste the exact same. The New York strips, the fillets, the ground beef, all of it's going to taste the exact same because it's coming from one farm and it's being raised the exact same way.
What's you mentioned your partner, Paul. I think you have like 2 or 3 partners in the business. What did first conversation look like? Did you guys were together and they said, listen, this is what I have, this idea. How did the whole idea come to fruition?
Yeah. I'm a schemer. I like to scheme and work things a little bit behind the scenes. So Paul, good friend that's been here in Front Royal forever, good rancher, knows what he's doing in the cattle side of the industry. He's been a good friend of mine for a while now. He's one of the founders. My brother-in-law, Declan, who lives here as well, is one of the founders. And then Jocko was the other founder. So I didn't tell Paul, I didn't tell Declan that I was thinking about these things. I called Jocko up first and I said, hey man, what do you think about starting a farm-raised beef company? And it was quite literally the easiest sales pitch of all time. He just said, and I'm not paraphrasing, he just said, I'm in. And then that was done. And that was the genesis of Primal. And then I called Paul and got him on board. And then I called Declan and got him on board. And this was all within about maybe a 5-day period. And I knew what we wanted to accomplish with Primal Beef is we wanted to take a snapshot of where we live, the existence that we have, the ability to know your farmer, the ability to know how your beef is raised, where it's being raised. And we wanted to take that and give that experience to as many Americans as we possibly can, because it's a tough time for farmers, and it's a tough time right now for the American public when it comes to sourcing quality beef, because you walk into a grocery store, maybe even a butcher shop a lot of times, and you don't know where that beef came from. There's a big possibility that beef's not even American, that it got imported from overseas because of all the policies that we have around beef production and beef importation. So I think that's actually very un-American. You know, the beef industry, cattle in America go hand in hand, all the way back to the foundation of the country, all the way back to the Old West. You know, our animal that we've subsided on as a country has been cattle. And we've gotten away from sourcing that local cattle. Now it's all these big conglomerations that do these big feedlot operations where cattle are just piled on top of each other.
I've seen them.
Beef. It's bad. We're importing beef from all over the place. And we wanted to take the value of where we live and expand that out to as many people as possible.
What, it is heartbreaking. So, you mentioned those like kind of cattle plants. A couple of years ago, I was with my son in Cooperstown, New York, for the baseball, and I stayed about 25 minutes away, and I was really out in, country, but I passed one of those, I guess, cattle farms, and they are locked in cages with like 2 inches next to them. And then the contrast to that was the farmer in Pennsylvania, and you see some cattle here, some here, further than the eyes could see, and they looked muscular. And then we see, what's talking about un-American is, the FBI. I've trained guys to prepare for FBI, so a bit heartbreaking is like the Amish farmer that they raided his farm because he's selling raw milk, and all I could think of
how dare he?
Right.
How dare he offer the most natural form of milk imaginable?
I thought to myself, Sean, like, we have, don't we have other problems in America where the FBI? I was just imagining, what does the meeting look like at, FBI headquarters, wherever they are? Okay, problems are up on the whiteboard. We got this going on, and then somebody's like, listen, this guy's selling raw milk, and everybody's like, all right, fuck all these other problems. We need to stop this guy. And I just can't imagine some of the, quote unquote, smartest people we have in the country working in the FBI. And that's what they're saying. Yes, that's a good idea. And so it's heartbreaking and crazy intertwined together. What, you made a post today. I'm going to share it on the blog. I'll repost it. What is the reality of what's going on in our country, Sean, with supposedly, who's the guy buying all the farmland? Bill Gates, right?
Bill Gates.
Bill
He's
Gates.
Sure. Yeah.
And how does China buy our land? What is really going on?
Because we're allowing them to do it, and we haven't put legislation in place to stop it. And there's plenty of legislators now that are pushing things through to try and stop that. But the reality is they've already bought up a huge portion of property, and no coincidence, a lot of that property they're buying up is right next to military installations all over the place. So you've got foreign governments that are buying up property. I mean, the reality of the cattle situation in America right now is it's one of the, if not the hardest times for cattle farmers in the past at least 50 to 60 years. And we're at an all-time low in cattle production inside the United States. Shouldn't say all-time, a 50-year low for cattle production inside the United States. And that's because, one, there's legislation that's making it very hard for these farmers to actually earn a living. Your margins when you're a rancher or you're a farmer, they're not huge margins. And you're squeaking by at a lot of different places. So legislation that stacks the deck against you, that makes diesel more expensive, that makes fuel more expensive, that makes crops more expensive. All of these things are hurting the local farmers. And a lot of these initiatives are like the green initiatives, and they're not done on accident. They're done for a purpose. And that purpose is to get less cattle on the land because it's viewed as unhealthy for the land to have that, which is a little bit silly. Then you've got the legislation, you've also got the average age of the American farmer right now. I think it's either 63 or 67. I can't remember which one of those it is right off my top of my head, but kids aren't taking over the family business because it's hard, and they've got different options now. So you've got farmers that are scaling back because they can't manage the workload that they could when they were 30 years old, and they don't want to. They want to retire. Now, they don't want to give the farm up. They want the farm to go to someone who's going to take care of it and keep that tradition going. But that's just not what most people are looking for nowadays. And you've got beef getting imported from all over the globe now, to include Paraguay, which we just lifted a 27-year ban on importing beef from Paraguay. The reason that ban was in place is Paraguay's been historically bad at managing their cattle, and it's led to a lot of disease outbreak. So we banned import from their cattle. We just lifted that, and we didn't lift it because all of a sudden they're now the safest place on the planet to buy your beef from. We lifted it because we're not producing enough beef inside the United States. These big cattle conglomerations that own most of the cattle products that you're getting in the supermarket, there's 4 big conglomerations that kind of own the mass production of beef. They make it very easy for a farmer to sell their beef. They come to the farmer, they say, I'll buy your entire herd guaranteed, but here's the price I'm going to pay. And the farmers don't necessarily want to do that. They'd rather sell it to their neighbor. They'd rather sell it to families that want good quality beef, but that's not happening. And the conglomerations are making it very easy for them to sell their beef. So that's kind of the situation we're in right now. And, hey, I'd love for everybody to order from Primal Beef, but if you're not going to do that, find your local farmer and support your local farmer.
Well, also, it's it's heartbreaking. And then if we look at, as a dad, the health of your kids, that's my background. So I kind of pay attention, I pay attention to trends. I have a good memory of what I've seen in the world from a physical standpoint 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What did the physicality of people look like before the iPhone? A buddy of mine brought up a great point. He's a little older than me. I'm 48, maybe he's like 53. He said, Zach, go back to the, 70s, early 80s. He's a look at like the old photos of Evel Knievel. And he said the background, everybody's like wearing no shirt. He's like, there's not a fat person in the stands. Yep. And being 48, I look back to, there would be in school one fat kid in the whole school. Then a little bit later, it became kind of like one fat kid in a class. Now we're seeing kids fat, obese. And I look at foods in the supermarket and I say, how does this milk expire 5 weeks from now? Like, what is in this milk that it's going to expire 5 weeks from now? So, I just came across Primal Beef not a week ago. I ordered my first shipment of ground beef. I usually buy a lot of ground beef. I make burgers, or I'll just cook up the ground beef, put some cheese on it, and my son will put some chips in it. But obviously it was amazing. But one thing you've done different, at least in my experience, I haven't ordered too much from people online, but it was shipped. I think it was free shipping and same day. How are you? That's got to be tough for you guys from an employee and production standpoint. That's very impressive and difficult.
Everything that we wanted to do as a company, we wanted it to be the best possible case for the customer, because we know the beef is just phenomenal. The second piece of that is making sure that the customer feels like they're getting their money's worth, because we are going to be more expensive than if you go to a grocery store. That's just the way that it is. Now, we're not trying to be like some of these other companies that are charging you $150 for a ribeye, but we can't offer it at a grocery store price because we're not paying, we're raising the cattle. We're not paying bottom dollar to farmers for their cattle. So we wanted everything to be the best possible experience for the customer. We know the beef is going to be the best beef they've ever had. So we wanted to give as much value to the customer as possible. And free shipping to us, this was really Paul's hill that he chose to die on, was he's like, no, like, we are going to offer free shipping because we did not want the customer's experience to be awesome. I just bought a box of ground beef for $170. Awesome. Put it in the cart. And now all of a sudden my order's $230 because I've got to pay shipping. So we decided that we would eat a lot of the cost of shipping because it was that important to us to provide that service and be that transparent pricing to our customers. The same day shipping came about because we knew right off the bat that we probably weren't going to be able to do all the fulfillment ourselves. So we partnered with a cold storage fulfillment facility that's in Kansas City. So all of the beef is raised right here. In Virginia, all of the beef is processed at our partner facility at Seven Hills Abattoir in Virginia. They do all the dry aging, the hand cutting, the packaging, the deep freezing, and then we ship all the beef to Kansas City. And the reason we did that was to be able to offer same day shipping and cut down on the shipping time. So if I'm going to ship a box of beef to California, it's going to take like 4 to 5 days for it to get there from Virginia. But because we put everything and partnered with that facility in Kansas City, now it's like 2 day shipping to California, 2 day shipping to New York, 1 day shipping to a large portion of the country. And they could offer same day shipping. So as long as the customer places an order before 12 o'clock Central Time, that order shipping out that exact same day. So it was very important to us that everything associated with the customer's Primal Beef experience is the best that they ever had, to include the packaging, to include the boxes, which we're super proud of. There's nothing that gives me more joy than seeing people send us videos of like the Primal Beef box on their front doorstep. And then the last piece of it is the customer service. We've had no issues with the quality of the beef, but because FedEx does the shipping for us, we can't control that. But it's important to us to take ownership of that if there's an issue. So if a box is lost, if a box is damaged, or a box is delayed, you're getting a call or an email from Paul or myself or Declan, and we're personally handling that issue and making sure that you get a brand new box of beef. Because we want to build a relationship with our customers. We want, in their mind, when they think of, hey, where should I go to get beef? We want them thinking of us because of the value that we bring to the table with the beef itself, but also the relationship that we form with them throughout that journey.
It's impressive. And you're right. Shipping from some companies for a 10-pack, 10 pounds ground beef could be $50.
Yeah.
And also, food in the supermarket is not cheap. There's weird things, right? There was an egg shortage, half a year ago. That's crazy. But eggs used to be $1. Now they're $6. At one point they were $8. And so, yeah, that's kind of, I describe it as, it's heartbreaking. It's crazy. It's strange just seeing, what is happening in America. What's, your day schedule look like, Sean, with working the farm, a family, a husband? You've got so many things happening. What's your wake up time, and what does a day-to-day look like?
Yeah, it's busy in the best possible way. So I don't ever set an alarm, but I typically am up around the 5 o'clock mark just naturally. I go downstairs, I make my coffee. I don't have many vices in my life, but I'm a coffee snob. So I have my little pour over set that I make, my little ritual, and then I just have my quiet time where I'm doing my reading, doing my prayers, and then organizing my day afterwards. So I'm looking at my task list of things that need to get done. Kids come downstairs, get to love on them for a little bit, help them get ready for school, and then I typically go and drop them off for school. And then en route, if I'm not flying somewhere for Echelon Front early that morning, usually I hit the gym on the way back in the morning. So I get my workout in, then I come back and take care of whatever needs to get done on the farm. And our farm's fairly hands off for the amount of cattle and things that we have on here, but it's winter time, so the grass isn't growing. So right now I'm rolling out hay bales for the cows. That probably takes about 20 minutes, feeding the chickens, checking for eggs, those type of things. And then it's just executing on my to-do list. So, checking emails for Primal, making phone calls for Primal, making sure that all the customers are happy. Usually got some calls interspersed in there for Echelon Front as well. And then, by the time that it's time to pick the kids up for school, I'm usually the ones that pick the kids up. Right now, sports season, which is awesome. So we go to the school after school pickup. My wife's coaching the soccer team. All my boys are playing rugby. I bring my youngest daughter with me. She's too young to really go to school yet. And we all just kind of hang out at the field and watch the boys play rugby and watch mom coach soccer. Maybe I do some sprints or get a second little workout there. We come home, kids do their homework, kids do the chores that need to get done, and then every single night we're sitting down together as a family, breaking bread, offering grace, and just closing the day out as a family, usually around a lot of good beef on the table, because like you, ground beef is kind of our go-to. We typically always have about 4 pounds of ground beef cooked on hand that the kids can just throw on whatever they want. Maybe we're having steak, maybe we're having chicken, but whatever the meal is, everything stops. Everybody comes, sits down for the meal. And then after that, it's basically bedtime routine, get the kids up to bed. And then my wife and I put the kids to bed around 7:30-ish. Whether they go to bed at not at 7:30 is up to them, but they're away upstairs, having their time upstairs in their room. And then my wife and I have the rest of the evening to ourselves to unwind and just enjoy each other's company.
That's great. It's a busy day. What's the morning reading? Is you're reading the Bible, or you're reading any book right now, or
Typically my morning time is Bible and prayer, going through the Bible in a year that Father Mike Schmidt's put together. So every day you wake up and it's organized into multiple chapters of reading. And if you stick with it every day, by the end of the year, you've basically read the entire Bible. So going through that, and then just quiet time where I have my time to, pray, and then also just get my mind right for the day and organize my thoughts.
what's your training? Is it organized through
Yes.
something, or okay, how does it look?
Yeah, so it's much more organized than it used to be. And, my banner statement would be, if I would have just listened to my sister, the strength coach, who's like one of the best on the planet, 15 years ago, I probably have a lot less bumps and bruises than I do right now. But so I'm 41. I'm still very active. I do a lot of the things that I did when I was younger, but now it's scaling that back and focusing on what's important. So I'm not trying to hit PRs anymore. There was a time in the SEAL teams where I was trying to squat as much as I could and deadlift as much as I could and being explosive as much as I could. And now I'm to the point to where that stuff doesn't matter to me really whatsoever. I still want to be strong. I still want to look good selfishly for my wife, but I want to be able to do the things that my kids love to do for as long as I can possibly do them. So the sports, getting out there, being able to coach rugby, coach boxing, play with them every now and then. So I do a 3-day split, and also my schedule's pretty busy. So I do a 3-day split right now where it's a full body split Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, I'm still doing something, but it's more explosive work, agility work, sprints, maybe some zone 2 heart rate type stuff. But the crazy thing is, throughout my whole life, ignoring my sister telling me don't do this, I was like, more is better, more is better, more is better. And now that I've actually scaled things back, I have not lost hardly any strength whatsoever. And I've actually made gains in different area because, not surprisingly from a scientific standpoint, my body actually has time to rest and recover from the abuse that I'm giving it. So being strategic about my goals, training smarter, not harder, and then just focusing on longevity versus just be as strong as I possibly can.
Yeah, it's that training are you in your 40s yet, or no?
Yeah, I'm 41.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't look like it, but I am in fact 41.
Well, strength training is the fountain of youth. I say men who don't strength train, they could be 10 years younger than you, yet look 10 years older than you. And so, and like you said, it's not as complicated. So your sister is working in naval special warfare now, or who's her contractor? Do you know which company? KBR?
I'm not actually sure who her contractor is, but she's been there now for probably 8 or 9 years. And then she does private coaching on the side. And then she's also starting to do programming for different organizations as well. And then she is, like, when you talk about a student of the game, that's Casey. So if I ever have any questions, anything, if I want a new program, like, Casey's the person that I'm going to. And I wish I would have done that many moons ago.
That's funny.
I'd probably be stronger and less beat up than I am right now.
That's funny that you didn't want to listen to her. She's younger than you or older?
She's younger than me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to look her up and see if we could get her on the podcast. That's amazing.
that.
Cool. We're gonna make it happen. What about your day-to-day eating, Sean? I always put in quotes, as we get older. Are you a skipping breakfast kind of guy, or it sounds like you're a steak and eggs guy?
No, steak and eggs. So I actually don't. I'm not hungry in the morning, but I have to force myself to eat, 4 eggs and then some ground beef, maybe some honey or a piece of fruit thrown in there. But I don't crave breakfast. So what I found is, my natural weight is around like the 205 mark is where I want to be. That's for me, that's the sweet spot of being strong, being fast, and being explosive.
Yep.
Anything less than that, and I lose some of that. Anything more than that, and I lose some of that. So that's kind of like my homeostasis. But to be there, I have to crush food all day long because my body doesn't want to be there. My body wants to be probably at like 190, 195 if I stopped eating. So I have to force myself to get those calories in at breakfast. But most of my meals are source of protein, fruit, vegetables. It's not carnivore. It's not like it's maybe you could say a little bit modified carnivore, but I'm not super strict with it. If I feel like I'm deficient one day in the calories, I'll slam a bunch of rice with stuff with dinner. So it's more about just single sourced, clean food and just getting as much of it in as I possibly can throughout the day. So for me, if I don't hit between 3,500 and 4,000 calories, I start to drop weight pretty quick, which is not what I want to do right now.
Impressive. And what about kids for breakfast? Eggs, toast,
Yep,
milk?
eggs. Some kids don't like eggs. So the beef, ground beef, some of their breakfast, they'll get rice, they'll get ground beef. We're not super strict with the kids yet because they're still really young. So
Yep.
we're not trying to fight them on things yet. We're trying to build in good habits, but they'll have a bagel every now and then. They'll have, a waffle every now and then for breakfast. But, bacon, eggs, we've started to make burritos for them, which they love. So we have our eggs from the farm. We'll get some good bacon that we've got from some neighbors up the road. Sometimes it's store-bought, some cheese, and we just put it in a wrap, and like they love that.
Yes.
So not super strict with them. There's no cereal. There's none of that processed nonsense. And you talk about the kids being out of shape and just people being out of shape. It's not the beef that's doing it. It's not the animal fats that's doing it. It's not the butter that's doing it. It's all that other garbage that they're getting with all of those processed foods that when you look on the back of the label, you can't even pronounce half the crap that's on there. So trying to get them to build, we're not trying to force things on them because I think that's counterproductive.
Yep.
We're trying to get them to realize the value of good food and good fuel for the body. And they're all athletic. They all play sports. So what I've been telling them is, your body needs 3 things to grow and get better. You've got to have work, which means you've got to put in the work. You've got to play your sport. You've got to do your PT, whatever the case is. You've got to have rest so your body has time to recuperate, and you've got to have good fuel. And if my kids can get that through their brain, then I think half the battle's won already.
Yeah. Plus, very important is you and your wife are active and you're leaders in the house. So when a dad reaches out to me, how do I get my kid to eat better, exercise? I said, well, if you do it, they just think it's normal activity. They think it's normal that we're eating eggs and beef and drinking lots of water and sprinting in front of the house. That's normal activity. We'll do hopefully a part 2 down the road if you
Right
have
on.
time. So it's primalbeef.com, or is it primalbeef.com?
Primalbeef.com.
.com.
It's at primal_beef_co on the gram on there as well. So you can get to the website from there as well.
I'll link it up. I'll put everything for everybody listening. It'll be in the show notes. It'll go on the website, and pick up some beef, pick up some meats from Primal Beef. It's awesome. We're supporting what we need in America, which, as we've discussed, is a little bit crazy times. And then Echelon Front, how often, what events are you at, Sean?
Yeah, so I'm at all the big events. And then, most of what I do is go and work with the individual companies. So Echelon Front is literally the best company that you could possibly be a part of. Everyone there is just, you talk about community, it's such a good community. Everyone there is truly living and breathing the values that we teach of ownership, of the importance of relationships, of all of those things. And we have kind of freedom of schedule. So we can more or less control the amount of times that we want to spend away on the road. It's important to spend that time because you're teaching people and making them better. So, I'm on the road probably 7-8 days out of the month is more or less my flow, but most of that is meeting with individual companies. And then I'll be at the musters. It's always awesome to meet people at muster. You got 1,000 people that you get to interact with and meet. And then our field training exercises, I'm at a decent amount of those as well.
It's impressive. All right, Sean, thank you so much for the time, everything you do, service to the country. For everybody listening, best way to support the show, support our guests. So connect with Sean through Primal Beef. Leave us a 5-star review and share this, either the video or the audio, with a friend. And we'll talk to you next time on Strong Leg Podcast. Sean, hang tight. So I say proper goodbye. We'll talk to everybody soon.